Okay, so are you ready to like dive into this whole thing with the Chinese stock market?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's got everyone talking.
It really
And
does.
for good reason,
Yeah.
right? Like, we're going to unpack why this market is so interesting to people,
Yeah.
even for people who don't like really get involved in the stock market that much.
Yeah. Just watching it can be a wild ride.
It really can be.
Yeah.
And so you wanted to know more about it. So we got a bunch of information together. And I think the core thing is this China's economy has been like booming, right?
Yeah. Incredible growth.
But their stock market hasn't necessarily followed that same path.
Yeah. That's what makes it so fascinating to look at.
Yeah,
Because you would think they would go hand in hand,
totally.
but that's not really what's happening.
So what is happening?
Well, it's kind of this
Yeah.
expectation versus reality situation.
Oh, okay.
And when those expectations change, watch out.
Oh, really?
Because it is a wild ride.
Is it a roller coaster?
Yeah, like a roller coaster with like loop-de-loops and corkscrews.
What? So tell me what's going on.
So like back in September,
Okay.
the CSI 300 index,
Yeah.
that tracks the biggest companies in Shanghai and Shenzhen,
Okay.
it plunged to a 5-year low.
5 years. That's a long time for a market to be down.
It is. The sentiment was very low.
Okay.
You had the property market like going down,
Okay.
government like tightening its control on tech.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S.-China tensions were just like looming.
Right.
Investors were very nervous and they sold.
Right. So it was kind of a perfect storm of uncertainty.
Really was.
And then what happened?
And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
it shot up 35%.
What?
Like almost overnight.
Oh my gosh.
Whiplash.
So what happened? Did they like suddenly discover a pot of gold under the Shanghai Stock Exchange?
Essentially, yeah.
Oh,
It all boils down to this.
what's that?
Nothing changes sentiment like price.
Okay.
So even the smallest idea of government stimulus can get investors like worked up into a frenzy.
Okay.
It's like a shot of adrenaline.
So is that what it was? Was it government stimulus?
It was the potential for
Okay.
it.
Okay.
So everybody is just waiting and watching for the government to step in.
So it's a very reactive market.
Very much so.
Okay, but that sounds really risky for investors.
It is very risky.
So how do you make an informed decision in a market like that?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
That's what makes it both exhilarating and terrifying for investors.
Okay.
It's really hard to figure out, like, China's policy moves.
Okay.
Because one day they can be doing one thing,
Right.
and the next day something completely different.
Right.
So you never really know.
So it's not for the faint of heart.
It is not.
Okay.
You really got to be able to handle risk and uncertainty.
And speaking of uncertainty, let's talk about that whole uninvestable label
Oh, yeah.
that was put on Chinese stocks like not that long ago.
Right.
That must have freaked some people out.
It did.
I mean, we're talking about one of the biggest economies in the world, and
Well-
someone's like, nope, uninvestable.
Yeah, that was JP Morgan.
What do they mean by that?
They were looking at the short-term political risks,
Okay.
especially in the tech sector.
Okay.
Because remember, this was right after the whole tech crackdown of 2021.
Right. And everybody was worried about how much the government was getting involved in the tech industry.
Well,
so
they-
they just thought it was too risky.
Yeah, too much unknown.
Okay. But it's been a few years since that.
It has.
Feel different now.
Sentiment has definitely shifted.
How so?
Analysts are feeling a lot more positive about Chinese tech companies these days.
Really?
Yeah, mainly because of the potential for government stimulus
Oh, okay.
and the chance of some pro-market reforms.
So are they biting? Are they buying back in?
That's the paradox.
Okay.
Despite all the valid concerns about government interference,
Right.
transparency,
Mm-hmm.
all the uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
Chinese equity funds saw record inflows in October 2023.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, we're talking like almost $40 billion.
Wow. So people are seeing opportunity in the chaos.
They are.
But then that leads to the bigger question.
What's that?
If China's economy is doing so well,
Yeah.
why hasn't the stock market reflected that?
Right.
What's the disconnect?
It's a good question, and I think a lot of it boils down to trust
Oh, interesting. Okay.
or the lack thereof.
Because investors need to know that their money is safe
Exactly.
and that it has the potential to grow.
Right.
And with all this talk of government intervention, unpredictable policies, it's no wonder some people are a little hesitant.
Yeah, it can definitely make you think twice.
Okay, so where do we go from here? Okay, so we've been talking about these like big picture issues.
Right.
But for someone who's maybe new to all this,
Yeah.
can you give us like a real world example of what a corporate governance issue might look like?
Sure. So, like, imagine a company where the CEO is also, like, secretly using company funds
Okay.
for their own personal use,
Okay.
like fancy vacations,
Right.
luxury cars, you know.
Live in the high life.
Exactly. And they're not telling the shareholders about it.
Wow.
So they're basically using the company as their personal piggy bank.
And that hurts the shareholders in the end.
It can dramatically impact the company's value.
Right? And that's the last thing you want,
Exactly.
is to invest in a company and then find out that the CEO has been like funneling money out of it.
Yeah, you don't want any surprises like that.
No, you don't. So how do you even spot those kinds of red flags, especially in a market like China that's, not exactly known for its transparency?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Transparency is so important in any market.
Right.
But it's especially important when you're dealing with a system like China's where information isn't always easy to come by.
Okay.
Or reliable for that matter.
Right.
So you really have to do your due diligence.
Okay, so no, like, throwing darts at a board with Chinese company names on it.
No, not a good idea.
Okay, so what does due diligence actually look like when we're talking about Chinese stocks?
It means going deeper than you might in other markets.
Okay.
Don't just rely on headlines
Okay.
or like surface level data.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to look at a company's track record,
Okay.
their financial reporting,
Mm-hmm.
any connections they might have to the government
Right.
or SOEs.
Okay, so you really got to look under the hood.
Exactly. You need to be able to answer questions like,
Yeah.
are they transparent about their operations?
Okay.
Do their actions match their words?
So investors really need to be careful.
They do. It's a different animal.
It is. So, okay.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the risks.
Right.
But what about the potential rewards?
Sure.
What is it about the Chinese market that's attracting investors in the first place?
Well, there's that old saying,
What's that?
no risk, no reward.
Right.
And the Chinese market definitely has its share of risk,
It does.
but it also has a ton of potential upside.
Okay.
I mean, remember,
Yeah.
we're talking about the world's second largest economy,
That's true.
a massive and growing middle class,
Right.
a
Yeah.
rapidly developing consumer market.
Right. It's a lot of people with a lot of money to spend.
Exactly. And there are investors out there who are willing to take on some risk to be a part of that growth story.
So they're looking past the short-term volatility.
Exactly. They're playing the long game.
Okay, so for those investors who are intrigued,
Yeah.
who are maybe thinking about dipping their toes into the Chinese market, what are some of the specific opportunities they're looking at?
One area that's getting a lot of attention is tech,
Really? Even after that crackdown?
especially after the crackdown.
How so?
Well, when you have a crackdown like that,
Yeah,
it tends to create some really good buying opportunities.
because everybody gets scared and sells.
Exactly. And the prices drop.
So you can get in at a discount.
Potentially. Yeah. And don't forget,
Yeah.
we've also got those hints of government stimulus
All right.
and potential pro-market reforms.
So the government might actually step in and help things along.
They might.
Interesting.
So a lot of people are feeling like Chinese tech is poised for a comeback.
Okay, risky, but potentially lucrative.
Exactly. What about you?
I don't know. I'm risk averse.
Okay.
What about other sectors
Right.
beyond tech?
Yeah. So another area that's attracting a lot of interest is consumer goods.
Okay, how so?
Well, as China's middle class keeps growing,
Yeah,
so does their spending power.
makes sense.
We're talking about hundreds of millions of consumers.
Right.
With more and more disposable income
Yeah.
and a growing appetite for pretty much everything.
Right.
Luxury goods,
Yep.
high quality health care,
Mm,
you name it.
it's like a whole new market opening up.
It really is.
And there are ways to get into that market now, right?
There are.
Like with those programs that you were talking about.
Exactly like Stock Connect,
Right.
which allows investors in Hong Kong and in mainland China to trade in each other's markets.
Oh, that's right.
So it's opening up a lot of opportunities for foreign investors.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
So it's not just Chinese investors anymore.
Not anymore.
It's global.
Exactly.
Okay. But it still sounds like you need to know what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just like investing in like an S&P 500 index fund.
Yeah, it's not that simple.
No.
It requires a deep understanding of the Chinese economy,
Right.
the political landscape,
Mm-hmm.
and all the unique risks that we've been talking about.
Right. Okay. So for investors who are like, okay, I'm interested.
Yeah.
I see the potential,
Mm-hmm.
but I also want to like mitigate my risk.
Right.
What are some key takeaways here?
Okay, so first and foremost,
Yeah.
don't get caught up in the hype.
Okay.
or the short-term market swings.
Easy to say.
I know, right?
Or to do.
It is, but remember what we said earlier about the roller coaster?
Oh, right.
This is a market that requires patience,
Okay.
discipline, and a long-term perspective.
So no panic selling.
No panic selling.
Okay.
Ride out the waves.
Okay, what else?
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Oh, right, diversification.
Exactly.
Don't bet the farm on one hand.
Precisely spread your risk around.
Okay. Good advice.
And finally,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to ask for help.
Okay.
There are financial advisors out there who specialize in the Chinese market.
Oh, okay.
They can be a great resource.
So maybe find a guide.
Exactly, someone who knows the terrain.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that leads to another question. So are the experts like bullish or bearish on Chinese stocks? What are they saying?
Well, if I had a crystal ball,
Right.
I could tell you.
Yeah.
But the truth is, nobody knows for sure.
Okay.
The future of the Chinese market is like a choose-your-own-adventure novel,
Oh, I like that.
right? It's full of twists and turns,
Yeah.
and the ending is totally up in the air.
So how should investors approach it then?
I think the most important thing is to remember,
Yeah.
this is a market that doesn't always play by the rules.
Okay.
What works in other markets
Right.
might not work in China,
Right. So all our usual assumptions are out the window.
pretty much.
Okay.
You really have to be ready for anything.
So you got to be flexible.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can't be afraid to adjust your strategy.
So no matter what happens,
Don't freak out.
don't freak out.
Stay calm. Stay calm and carry on investing.
Okay. I like it. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But if there's one thing you want listeners to take away from this conversation, what would it be?
I would say this.
Okay.
Don't get so caught up in the hype
Okay.
that you forget to look at the fundamentals.
Okay. So do your homework.
Exactly.
Understand what's really driving the market.
Right, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. That's the truth.
It really is.
And on that note,
Yeah.
I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating and often unpredictable world of Chinese stocks.
It's been fun.
It has. Until next time, happy investing, everyone.